Well, hey, folks, and welcome to another installment of Ask Gordon here on the SiteCraft YouTube channel. One of the questions that I get a lot from people, particularly in my clinical practice, is how do I overcome my anxiety about things or just general anxiety? There's a diagnosis called general anxiety disorder, and a lot of us, most of the time, depending on different times in our life, we would meet the criteria for general anxiety disorder. But one of the tools that I like to teach people is mindfulness. So, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness, just put very simply, is to be aware of what you're thinking and what is going on in your body in any particular moment. One of the things that happens when we get into an anxious state is that we go down this road of what I call the what ifs. In other words, we project ourselves into the future and think only about what bad thing could happen or what could happen in the future. Now, we're pretty good at sometimes predicting the future, but until we get to the future, there's nothing we can do about it. And another thing I like to say about anxiety is that it has a way of tricking us into thinking we can't handle things. So, one of the quick tools I want to teach you today is just to think about what you're thinking about, what is going through your mind right now. Or sometimes for people, there's just kind of this continuous loop over a particular topic. It might be concern for our children, it might be a relationship that you're in and just worried about where that's going to go, worried about what other people are doing or what other people are thinking. Again, all things that, if you really think about it, are outside our control. And that's usually what happens when we feel anxious is that we focus too much on things outside our control. So the mindfulness practice is really a reversing of that, or a way to really focus on more of what you can control. And what we can control is usually always here in the present moment. So, one of the things about being mindful is it gives us a way of being grounded in the present moment. So, one of the things too about mindfulness is it helps us determine what things might be thinking mistakes. In cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the terms that is used a lot is thinking mistakes. In other words, how we're thinking about something might not be accurate. And so that can put us into a tailspin of just being anxious or feeling overwhelmed in different situations. So here's what I'd like for you to do. One of the things that helps with mindfulness is being aware of what's going on in your body. And right now, I'd like for you to take just a deeper than normal breath. Just in through your nose and out through your mouth. And I want you to pay attention to what that feels like in your body. Maybe the cool air going in through your nose, what it feels like to fill up your lungs and then slowly exhale that out. The other thing, too, that helps with mindfulness is being aware of what's going on around you in your current environment. So I'm here at my office and there's traffic noise outside that the microphone hopefully isn't picking up on. There's also the temperature of the room. I'm aware that I'm looking at the screen and aware of the lighting and how I look in this particular moment. And so that is me getting mindful or being aware and present in this moment. Now, it's a practice that takes practice. And so we have to give ourselves some grace, as I like to say, as we learn to be more mindful. But I think with time we can teach ourselves how to be more mindful. One practice that is really helpful is meditation. And really, if I think about meditation, is just simply a mindfulness practice in and of itself, and that you're really focusing in on what you're thinking about and being able to push all your thoughts aside and just experience what it's like in that particular moment, in that particular time. One quick story I'd like to tell you about too, and this has to do part of a mindfulness practice is thought stopping. In other words, when we become aware that our thoughts are maybe becoming a little more obsessive or a little more too much, in other words, we get stuck in these loops in our heads and we can kind of hone in on things or focus too much on things that really are outside our control. So the story is when my daughter was in college, which was about a 4 hour drive, 4.5 hour drive away, whenever she would come home, I would immediately, she'd text me and let me know that she's on her way. And immediately I'd start thinking about her route and what she would run into on that route. I would think about the traffic that she would go through, particularly around Chattanooga and Knoxville, which was part of her route. And just worried about, okay, she could be in a car accident. She could be stopped by the police. She could be any number of things. She could have a flat tire. And my mind would just keep churning that over of really getting overwhelmed with her trip home. And so, what I would simply do when I recognized, okay, I'm thinking too much about this, I'm overthinking this, I would just simply tell myself in my mind, just stop and then shift my thoughts to something else, usually something I was working on in the moment, something I was doing either here in the office or at home, that sort of thing. So that's part of mindfulness. But anyway, wanted to just mention that in that mindfulness is simply a tool. It doesn't necessarily cure anxiety or make it go away completely, but it does give you more control over what is happening in your mind and in your body as you think about things that create anxiety for yourself. So, hopefully, this is helpful. Do leave your comments down below. Also, send me your questions. I'd love to hear from you. You can get in touch with me at Gordon@sightcraftnetwork.com or Gordon@practiceoftherapy.com, which is my podcast website. So hopefully this is helpful, and keep your questions coming, and we'll come back again later for another installment of Ask Gordon.